Hey, Luke Hart here. So in this nuts and bolts video, I'm going to be looking at how to create a D&D adventure. This is what I consider a quick and dirty method, a very low prep method of preparing an adventure. Today, I'm going to be walking through how I prepare adventures for my Wonder Panda campaign that I run with coworkers. Really, all I do is I prepare the bare minimum, and then I plan on improvising everything else. So for this adventure, I came up with about 6 pages of notes, and that provided enough content for us to play 1 hour every week for about 3 to 4 months. So that's a total of 12 hours of gameplay. The other thing that I want to mention is that this is just how I prepare my games, how I create my own adventures. Other DMs will do it differently, and there is no best way to do it, nor is there a correct way to do it. I'm just sharing this information because I think that other DMs might find it useful. I think too that it could be useful for players because they'll get to see how much work their dungeon masters actually put into it to be able to run games for them. Alright, so first of all, what you're seeing on the screen right now is the raw template that I use to create most of my adventures. Most of my adventures start out with this template right here. It's got some of these basic things that I'm going to fill in: creatures, notes, storyline, locations, random encounters, inciting action, traps, resolution. So all of these little sections are here ready for me to fill out. And that is how all my adventures begin. Alright, so here is the finished adventure, Darkness Upon the Forest. So I'm first just going to kind of cruise through here to kind of give you an idea of what I do. As you can see here, this thing is like 6 pages long. And so I have a bunch of information filled in here. And we're going to walk through this kind of step by step. And I'm going to explain how I do all of this stuff here. Really just giving you kind of like an overview, kind of a look-see at it. And I know that when I showed this to one of my friends, he was like, 6 pages, that's crazy. That's more preparation than I do for like my normal games and stuff. And yeah, this is what I consider a low prep game for me. There's actually a lot of improvisation that goes on running a game like this for me, running an adventure like this. So anyway, let's see what we let's dive in here a little bit. Basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how I went from that blank template that I showed you to this finished adventure. One little note about this, the things that I present here they're mostly in chronological order, but not necessarily, and sometimes I change it up, sometimes I do things in a different order. It doesn't really matter how you get it done. So the first thing that I do is, as you can see here, I have this creatures section, and it lists out all of the creatures that are going to be in the adventure. Now, before I ever start listing out creatures in the adventure, I first have to get inspiration for what creatures are going to be in the adventure. Now, I usually get this inspiration from reading like Volo's Guide to Monsters or the Monster Manual. I really love reading monster lore because monster lore is what gets me thinking and inspires me to write adventures. And I think most of my adventures start out with me reading one of those books and just being like, this is freaking awesome. I want to run an adventure with this monster in it. And then I write an adventure with that monster in it. So once I have a basic idea of the monsters that I want to have in my adventure, I fill all this stuff in. You can see here that I'm just putting a bunch of information here for my reference. The page number it's on, the challenge rating, the number of XP to award for it. This is all for my future reference. Now obviously you can thumb through the monster manual and get this information if you want to. I put it all here because it makes my life easier in the long run. And you can see here that in the DM notes section, I'm basically making a note that I designed this adventure for 4 level 1 characters. And at some point, I'm also going to make rolls on the DMG's treasure tables. And I made a note here that I rolled twice on level 0 to 4 treasure hoard. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a basic storyline for my adventure to take place in. And I'm not predetermining what the story is going to be. What I'm basically doing is I am deciding what the problem is that needs to be resolved, what the monsters are doing, what's going on. And I'm just going to map out a little bit of what I think may happen, but I'm not railroading. None of this is set in stone. This is all just planning things for my purposes. And ultimately, whatever story I decide might happen, or whatever framework is there, the players are almost always going to come up with something a little bit different. But this is just to help me plan and prepare. All right, I'm going to skip down a little bit to an inciting action. This is something that I do for all of my adventures So there's going to be something that kicks the adventure off. There's going to be something that this is the hook basically. This is the thing that happens that makes the players, the heroes, want to do this adventure that you're going to have them do. And so I always plan something out here. You can see here that in the case of this story, they are in a forest and they hear a child screaming. And they find him, he's fleeing away from demons. And this child is going to give them a story, and he's basically going to ask them for help in rescuing his friend Shalana. And so that's kind of the hook, and the idea here is that the heroes are going to want to help the child. And my players are all really cool, and they usually don't ignore my hooks, and so I'm lucky in that regard. Now, one of the other things that I do at some point here, a lot of times before I start fleshing out more of the adventure, is I might actually decide up front what the encounters that I want to have are. Like, I might have about 5 or 6 different encounters that I decide that I want to have in my adventure, and I might plan them out all in advance. Like, for instance, here on the screen, you can see I have like 3 twig blights and 3 twig blights and a needle blight. I might decide that as the final boss battle, I want to have a druid riding a giant spider. Things like that. So a lot of times before I ever start fleshing anything out here on paper, on a scratch piece of paper, I might decide what the encounters are going to be. And I'll decide, if it's a medium encounter, a deadly encounter, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll kind of like plan all that stuff out ahead of time. And then as I'm actually going through my little document here and planning out things more depth, I will take those encounters that I already had decided that I wanted to have present in the adventure, and I will place them throughout the adventure where it makes sense for me to do so. Now, one little thing about planning out encounters, it is important to plan out encounters that are going to be more than likely that are going to turn into combats, but also make sure you're including encounters that will be non-combat encounters, people or things or creatures that your players can just simply interact with and talk to, because including those elements in your story is equally as important as including, fighting and stuff. I mean, another type of an encounter that I make sure that I include in my adventures when I'm creating them are social interactions. I think including social interactions, that's what I call it, but most people call it role-playing opportunities. I think the entire game of Dungeons & Dragons is role-playing. To simply call one part of the game role-playing is not very accurate in my opinion. So I call those social interactions, but we want to make sure we have some of those in the adventure as well. Very important to include those. And when I get into this a little bit later, you're going to see all these different elements that I included in the adventure itself. The other thing when I'm doing my pre-planning thing here, and this is before, I know I'm looking at the Word document here, but these are things that I do before I ever open up the Word document. I might be making, it might be in the Word document, but I'm basically making maybe a bulleted list or something of the different elements that I'm going to include in the adventure. But this is planning that happens before I actually start fleshing it out on a piece of paper here, or in this case, in a Word document. But one of the other things I'm going to look at too is I'm going to look at elements such as exploration and puzzles and traps, and I want to plan those things out. So for instance, exploration. This part of the adventure is, what do I got here? So in the case of this adventure here that I planned out, much of it is exploration and solving a mystery. So for this particular adventure, I did not put any puzzles in it, so there's none of that going on. And this adventure does have 1 trap in it, I believe, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. But when you're doing your planning phase, this is the important thing here. It's important to include a variety of these elements in your adventure. You don't want to have an adventure that is purely combat, or have an adventure that is simply all puzzles, or for instance, or even for that matter, all social interactions. Your players, more than likely you have players that are not all the same, and some of them enjoy certain things more than other things. And so when you're planning an adventure, it's important to have a variety of elements that is going to appeal to all the different types of players that you have at your table. I'm trying to find the map. I'm supposed to show a map on screen, and I don't recall. I don't know where I put it, honestly. Okay, so the next thing that I generally, maybe it's not the next thing, but one of the things that I definitely start doing at some point when I'm planning out the adventure is that I make a map. Now, if I'm doing more of a dungeon crawl, or it's going to be taking place indoors, and even if it's taking place outdoors and the encounters are out in different types of terrain and stuff, I usually start making a map at some point. Now, I just use simple grid paper for all my maps. It's nothing special, nothing spectacular. Here's a tip. A lot of times what I do for my maps is I go onto Google and I just look for D&D maps. And I use that to give me inspiration, to give me ideas for how to make my own maps and my own like dungeons and things like that. Because sometimes it's being creative in a void is very difficult. And so I'll do that a lot of times. Now, for this particular adventure, I didn't end up making a whole bunch of maps for it. I do have a little bit of a map that shows like the interior of the cave and stuff like that. Now, if I can find it, I'll put it up here and it'll probably be like overlaid over top of this video right now. So if I found it, then you're probably looking at the map right now. And so basically this is all I got going on. I mean, it's basically there's a tree here in like a ravine, and then there is a cave that, a cave entrance that leads into a cave complex. And this is really all the map that I needed for this, because most of this adventure took place outside, out in the forest. And I mostly just ad-libbed, like, the description of those scenes and stuff like that. Oh, another thing that's important to note is that a lot of times I make lots of notes on the map itself, and that prevents me from having to refer back to my papers and stuff, because I just can look at the map. Okay, so I mentioned before how I will roll in the Dungeon Master's Guide on the loot tables, and basically what I do is, let me see if we can see here. I don't know if we can find some places in here. Nothing really so far. Okay, here's some loot. So here's some monetary loot that they found on some corpses, or they will be able to find on some corpses. And there's probably some loot somewhere else, somewhere. Oh, somewhere there's loot. If I can find it. Okay, here's some loot, okay, at the very end of it, some reward items. So basically what I do is I roll on the DMG loot tables and I write down the stuff that I came up with on the loot table, and then as I'm creating the adventure, I just go through and I place that loot where I think I want to put it. And that's all there really is to it. I think it is important, though, to try to spread that loot out over the adventure. Make sure you put some of it on the monsters they're going to vanquish, put some of it in chests, put some of it in like hidden cubbies. Just kind of spread that loot around so that they're going to find it all over the place. I mean, I don't think you definitely do not want to have like all of your monsters and everything have no loot whatsoever, and then when the heroes get to the very end of the adventure, there's a big chest full of loot. I mean, that works for video games and stuff, but that doesn't work so well for Dungeons & Dragons. So what I'm going to do too, before I forget, is I am going to put a link down in the description here to the template that I use and to this finished adventure that we're going to be looking at here in more detail. And I also have, if you guys are interested, over on DriveThruRPG, I have a couple of adventures that I've published over there, and both of them are pay what you want, so you can just download them for free. You don't have to give me anything, whatever. Just use them for reference, and that's another example you guys can look at to see how I design my adventures. Now, those two, however, are much more complicated than this one that we're looking at right here. But anyway, they're out there in case you want to take a look at them. Okay, now what we're going to start doing is we're going to start going through this adventure a little piece by piece. I'm going to kind of explain what I'm doing here. So at the beginning here, you can see that I have locations. So I will fill out different locations that I think that the heroes might come across in the adventure. Here, they're mostly just going to be in Lamilty, an elven village in the Wood of Sharp Teeth. I'm also going to fill in information about NPCs. Now, this information that I filled out here is pretty light. There's not a whole lot of information about these NPCs that I listed here. Now, again, this is one of my quick and dirty preps, and so a lot of times I will have a lot more information about my NPCs. Sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll just ad-lib it all. But for instance, this one right here, Avandith Stargazer, this is the main villain of the entire adventure. And so what I'd like to do for my villains is there's some basic information about her. She's an elven druid, blah, 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 blah. But I list out her motivation, and in this case, it's to spread the power of the Goliathus tree, or whatever that is, throughout the forest and corrupt all living beings by feeding them a drink made from the sap and the blisters of the Goliath tree. And then her means. She uses blights, her own magic, and deception to capture elves from Lamilty. So I think when you're fleshing out a villain, these are important things. You want to know what their motivation is, and you want to know what their means are. Like, what tactics and strategies are they actually going to take to accomplish what they're trying to do? And then I got something about this Goliathus tree or whatever you want to pronounce it. And then these are a couple of the children they run into. Now here's the other thing too. This whole village of Lamilty I have fleshed out previously, and so I have lots of information about the NPCs that are in this village on like little cards that I keep. And actually I can show you, I can probably show you this real quick. This isn't going to take but a second. What I do for my NPCs is I have all of these like 3x5 cards, or I'm sorry, these are 4x6 cards that I fill out that has lots of information about the NPCs. And then on the front side, it has like pictures of the NPCs. And so that's what I do for a lot of my, not all of my NPCs, but a lot of the NPCs that are going to be reoccurring in my games, I will do those cards for them. And so for the village of Lamilty, I have a lot of those already made up. And so I didn't really need to flesh out a whole lot for this adventure in particular. Oh, a lot of times you're going to find that it's very, very useful to have physical descriptions of your NPCs too. So you can just describe them to your players. You know, blonde hair, blue eyes, black hair, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, random encounters. You can see here that I'm staring at a few random encounters. I always include some random encounters just in case I need them for whatever reason. And actually, when I was running this for my friends, I ended up using this giant constrictor snake as a random encounter at level 1, and I almost killed one of them in the first round. So that was probably a little too much. I already mentioned the inciting action, so I'm not going to belabor that point. And you can see here that I am starting to sprinkle in these encounters. So here's 3 twig blights they come across. Here's another scene. So after they run into Oliver and get his story and get the hook, Oliver's going to ask them to go after Shalana, his friend, who was captured by these blights. And the idea here is that and there's just some basic information here. There's not a whole lot. The idea is I'm just kind of improvising it and I'm rolling with the players, and whatever method they come up with for tracking her down, is probably going to be successful, and they're going to run into these blights that have her. And then there's a scene that's going to play out. And I mean, this turned into a combat. They're non-intelligent, like plant creatures basically, and so they're going to have to fight them. So you can see here, I mean, I got like different scenes that are laid out, what they're going to do. I have some basic information about these scenes. Notice that I'm using some bolding to make things stand out to me. I'm using bulleted lists. Bulleted lists and bolding and all of these heading levels are going to help you find information quickly in your adventures when you're referring to them. That's actually one of my biggest critiques and one of my biggest complaints about published modules is that they're very nice to read through, like if you're lying in bed trying to go to sleep at night or whatever, but to refer to them at the table, to make quick reference out of them, is a pain in the butt because they are not made to be referenced, they're made to be read. And when I'm running a game at a table, I don't want something that's pleasant to read. I want something that I can reference on the spot and find what I'm looking for. And so when I'm writing my adventures, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make things easy for me to use at the table. You can see here that I was using milestones for this adventure, and so at this point when they accomplish these things, there's a little note here about them gaining a milestone. And here I got more scenes, right? I got a scene with some wolves they run into, and what I'm doing here is I'm kind of making these are anchor points that I kind of have in mind. So for this adventure is actually all theater of the mind. For my Wonder Panda campaign that I run with my coworkers, we do it all theater of the mind, and with no grid, no minis, none of that stuff. And so I'm using anchor points here, which my friend Joe from work told me about. And basically the idea here is that they're just different places in the scene that you can actually be located during combat, and it helps people keep track of where they are. And so these are the notes about anchor points that will be available in each scene. Okay, notice here, this is pretty good. So they run into this satyr called Zakit, who I had a really cool voice for. And they run into him, he's drunk and all that crap. But this is one of the social interactions that I planned for this adventure. Not all fighting and stuff. Here's a nice, cool social interaction. And you'll notice that I have some notes about Zakit interactions. What his motivations are, what he's thinking, doing, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. Things that I envision might come up and might be useful and might happen while they're talking with the Zakit. And I've got a little bit of information here, just in case they decide to fight this satyr, who I presented to them as totally non-combative, and they didn't fight him. But okay, well, you got to look at this. Check this out. So what you've noticed so far is that I haven't done any read aloud text. Now, for my other adventures that I do that are really more fleshed out, I do put read aloud text all over the place. Now, for this one, because this is a very lightweight one, I don't do it a whole lot. In this case, for whatever reason, when I was writing this, I decided that I wanted to make read aloud text. And so right here, this is kind of how I do my read aloud text. I kind of highlighted it right there for you. And so, yeah, occasionally I'll do read aloud text. Oh, you know, I should do his voice.
Zakit, my name is Zakit. Yes, this is my name. I need wine. Zakit needs wine, he does.
I don't know. It was something like that. I don't know. You know, it's almost midnight. I'm getting tired. I'm like, so I'm probably not doing a very good job of that. Sorry. Let me see. What else you got going on here? Okay. So, the corpses scene. So this scene right here, this is another example of a variety of variation in the scenes and not doing all the same type of thing. This scene right here I designed and put here purely as an exploration scene, purely as something for them to kind of poke around at and investigate. And so they basically just come around some corpses lying there, and they had a bit of fun. They thought they were trapped. They thought it was an ambush or something. And it was really just some goblin and hobgoblin corpses lying there for them to like explore and loot. And yet they made it into this big thing about like, oh my gosh, it's an ambush. It's a trap. Don't go near there. Those plant things are going to ambush us and kill us. And it wasn't any of that, which, you know, they turned it into that. But basically they just come upon these things and they loot them and they get some loot. So that's all that was. Here's some more read aloud text and some information about how they can destroy the Goulius tree or whatever. And notice what I put here. The tree can be destroyed by various means. See what the heroes try. You know, I mean, and then I got some suggestions here from ways they could do it. I mean, this is an example of there not being a right answer, right? I mean, there's a tree here, it's corrupting the forest, and it doesn't really matter if there's an objective way to stop the tree. I mean, in my game, in this particular instance, it didn't matter. Not for me, at least. Now, if you want to write your own game and do your own thing, and there is an objective way to do it, and it matters, then that's cool. That's totally fine. But in this case, I was just like, whatever. You know, if they want to burn it, that works. If they want to pull out the stump and roots, that works. If they want to chop it down, that works. And I don't even remember how I think they burned it. Yeah, my players set it on fire and burned it. And then that worked. It cured the disease of tree in the forest. Okay. So while we're looking at this clearing in the ravine, these 6 guards here who are corrupted elves, this was another type of encounter I put in for them. And this was an example of an encounter where it's going to turn into a fight. It was designed as a fight, but it's not necessarily one that you should kill the people that you're fighting, right? This is an example of their corrupted elves. Presumably, they can be uncorrupted, and so you shouldn't necessarily kill them. You should try to capture them and then try to cure them. And I think they ended up killing 4 of them, and they let 2 of them live. So this was a different type of an encounter. The encounter where you have to fight somebody that you don't want to kill. Again, the theme here is a variety of different encounters, a variety of things that your players are going to find in the adventure. Okay, captive cells. And so this druid had a bunch of captives that she was holding here, and the players were going to come upon them and have some sort of social interaction with these captives. Okay, so the brewing chamber right here, this is basically this was going to be the final battle of the adventure, and so I made a bunch of notes here. You know, I got some bulleted lists going on. I got the druid riding her giant spider. You know, I got my anchor points for that. So there's just some basic notes about how I kind of want to run that encounter, and I don't think that this encounter actually turned out anything like I thought it might. But I got notes here anyway, so I did some prep on it. It didn't work out that way, but that's life sometimes. Ah, yes. Okay, let's check this out. Read aloud text. Okay. Oh, this is really good. So check this out. This is usually how I describe rooms. Okay. So here's Avandis' room, a locked door. Here's some information about how they can get through that door. Here's my read aloud text. But here, There's a mall in that room, and here's information about that mall. There's a wardrobe in that room. If somebody tells me I want to go over and check the wardrobe out, here I can quickly reference what is in that wardrobe. And I can quickly reference what's on the table. I can quickly reference the shelves and the chest. Now, in a typical module that you're going to buy at the store, they're not going to have these things all spelled out nice and neatly like this. You're going to have to dig through a few different paragraphs to try to pull this information out of there. And that annoys the crap out of me, okay? And so when I'm running my adventures, again, quick reference at the table. And so I put these things like this so that when I'm at the table and somebody's like, dude, I'm looking at the wardrobe, I can go right to it and I know exactly what's in that wardrobe without having to dig through freaking paragraphs in a module somewhere. All right, so there's that. There's my little rant on that too. So traps. So you can see here, this, I put a trap on the chest. All right, this is pretty simple, nothing really special here. I mean, this is a basic trap, and I threw it on a chest. I had 3 new players. I wanted them all to, get introduced to traps, and putting a trap on the chest is the right thing to do. So I basically put some information about it. I mean, this is really just all. I think this is from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. I think this is their method of laying out traps. So I'm really just kind of doing it by the book here. There's nothing special here. There's a basic description about what the trap does, and I have a trigger for it, and then I have the effect of the trap, and then I have countermeasures, with some rolls and stuff like that. Now here's the thing. A lot of times I'll write all of this stuff out, but I don't necessarily stick to these numbers that I have here. Sometimes I just kind of fudge it. Like, for instance, this trap right here. If they didn't find the trap, and for whatever reason I really wanted them to find the trap, I might just make that number a little bit lower, okay? If these guys all just got through a crazy crappy battle, and they're all beat up and half dead, mostly dead, and this trap goes off on them, and it does tons of damage and potentially wipe them all out, I might not have it do that much damage when I run at the table. And so I write all this stuff out, I plan all this stuff out, but everything is up for improvisation once it's actually being run at the table. And this goes back to one of my themes that I firmly believe in, that the Dungeon Master cultivates the game. Okay, I can plan all this stuff out, but when it actually comes to the table and running the game, I am cultivating the game experience for my players. I am not beholden to all of this stuff that I planned out. I am not beholden to the rules. What I'm really beholden to is my players, and doing what's best for them, and doing what is going to cause them to have what I believe will cause them to have the most fun. And sticking religiously and dogmatically to these rules and to what I planned out in advance isn't always the best way to do that. Now, all that being said, I tend to follow the rules in the book because I think that's the fair thing to do. However, everything's up for grabs, and I think different DMs can approach that different ways. This is a tangent. Sorry, this has nothing to do with creating an adventure. So we'll just call it a day for that right now. But there was an interesting discussion and lots of interesting stuff behind all of that I just mentioned. All right, so we're almost done. Which is good because I want to go to bed. And let's just pop down to here. Resolution. So, the premise here is that the players are going to finish the adventure. They're not going to all die, and they're going to get to the end of it. And so I just have some notes here about what happens when they do finish the adventure. So they return Vufu to Zekit. Vufu was Zekit's wife, who the druid had prisoner, and so if they rescue Vufu and return her to Zekit, here's some information. They get a reward. Here's some of that loot table that loot that I distributed. Back in the elven village of Lamelty, Elrindel is going to reward them for taking care of the blight on the forest, and here's a bunch of cool rewards for them, and faction increase. So in my games, I also have factions, and you can gain favor and lose favor with these factions, and that influences certain things in the game. Now, I don't have it super fleshed out and stuff, it's just something I'm trying to implement, but I have that information there to use that. And then, milestone. So now they gain level 3. And so basically you might notice that I put these guys on a fast track to gaining a level. Because I wanted to get them through 1, 2, and then to 3 really quick. Because in 5th edition, levels 1 and 2 are squishy zone. And I like to be able to throw some nice monsters at my players. All right, so I think that I mentioned most of the stuff that I wanted to mention about this adventure. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. So there we go. I mean, that in a nutshell is how I do a quick and dirty D&D adventure. If you have any questions about this, please hit me up down in the comments. I'm always happy to help. I'd also be interested in knowing how you create adventures for your games. Is it anything like this, or do you do something completely different? If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, share it with your friends, and consider subscribing. Until next time, let's play D&D.